Hello, explorers, and welcome to Q&A episode 41 of Unbroken. I'm your host, Alexandra Amor, and I'm here today with the question, why is it good news when we backslide? And by backslide, I mean when we feel like we were making progress and maybe our unwanted habit was a little bit less pressing than it used to be, or we're, in the case of overeating, we're eating a little bit better than we were, and we feel like we've been making a little bit of progress. And then what happens when things, start to feel like we're slipping backwards. We're not where we were a few days or a few weeks ago. Things seem to be getting worse instead of better, or worse than they were anyway when we had improved. So that's what I mean by backslide. And today's episode might be a little bit longer than these episodes typically are, because I need to delve into two separate things, or I want to delve into two separate things in order to explore this. And then it's also going to be a little more personal than the episodes usually are, because this is something that I'm encountering right at this moment. So let's get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is the way that change happens and the way that we evolve and grow. And when we have a situation like the one I just described, where we feel like we were maybe doing better, a habit was beginning to resolve itself, and then it isn't anymore. It isn't getting better. It feels like it's getting worse, or we've slid back a little bit. It can, we have that expression, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It can feel like that. It can feel like we're going backwards, or maybe we're going in a circle. We've circled back around to a place that we were before, and it can feel like the progress that we made, that maybe we've negated that somehow, that it's slipped out of our grasp, that it's gone away, and we can get down on ourselves about that, of course. So the first thing I want to explain is how it seems to me that growth and healing, and this has definitely been my experience, are more like a corkscrew shape. And so for those of you on YouTube, I'm holding up a corkscrew. So a corkscrew, of course, has this spiraling motion, as you can see. And this is a really great metaphor for learning and growth and change and resolving something like an overeating habit. Because no matter what's going on, even if we feel like we made some progress and now we've fallen back, we're still moving forward. And that's why the corkscrew shape is such a helpful metaphor. Because if you lay it on its side and it's making that motion, it's still, you're curling, one way and then the other, but it's still a forward momentum, right? And this is something, there's a lesson in the Freedom from Overeating course that I have that goes into this in more detail, but I love that metaphor. And so then the second thing that I want to explore with regard to this metaphor is that if you think of that shape of the corkscrew, there's a part of it where you're coming around the top of the spiraling motion. And, if this was a roller coaster, you'd then tip over the top and then be going downhill, right? And so those are the moments when things feel easy and they're flowing. And this is what happens after insights occur to us and we have a shift, and it can be small or it can be large. Either way, there's that forward momentum and it's downhill, right? It's easier. We're being pulled by gravity, as it were, and it can feel smooth and easy. And it's just a good feeling when we're in that part of the spiral, right? But then you know that there's the back of the spiral, that occurs, right? So the spiral goes down, and then now it's curving forward, still moving forward, but you're in the back of it. And this is an uphill slope. So the roller coaster would be curving, that way if it was going upwards. And so this is what's happening when we feel like we're sliding backwards, going, having taken some steps forward, that we're now going back. But the thing to remember is that with that spiraling motion, or one of the things to remember, is that it's, as I say, it's still moving forward. You haven't circled back around to where you were. You are still moving forward with that motion of the corkscrew or the spiral. And then the second thing to remember about that place, the back of the spiral, is that that's where the really juicy stuff occurs. This is where we learn. This is where change happens. And this is the place where we start looking for insight, because things have gotten tough. We're on this uphill slope. It feels like a grind. We feel like maybe we lost the momentum, perhaps, of where we were before. And it's less smooth, less easy. But again, that's where the learning occurs. This is when you're in the back of the spiral, that's where you're going to have insights, and you're going to see more about your own well-being and your innate resilience and resourcefulness and all that good stuff. So the other thing I want to say too about the back of the spiral is that it's such human nature, and it's so easy to have a knee-jerk reaction when that's happening. So we've taken 2 steps forward, we're feeling great about how we're eating, and then suddenly things shift and it's not going as smoothly, and we suddenly have cravings that we haven't experienced in a while. Perhaps we notice that our overeating habit maybe seems to have flared up. It's gotten a little worse instead of getting better, that kind of thing. And the knee-jerk reaction in that moment is to panic. So it is to resist what's happening, right? And that's perfectly natural and normal and human, and we all do it. And I just want to say here today that what we can do is, I guess, a few different things. So one of those things is to know that we're simply in the back of the spiral. This isn't the end of the world. It's not going to be like this forever. And this motion, this spiraling motion that we're always in as we're learning and growing, it's a natural part of our growth and our learning. Growth and learning is never just straight like an arrow. There's that cartoon, that meme that people put up on Facebook or Instagram every once in a while, what they think success looks like, and it's just a 45-degree angle in a graph, and then what it really looks like, and the line, it's going in the same direction, but it's all squiggly and squirrely and all that kind of stuff. So the same principle applies here. As we're exploring this understanding and learning more about it, it's never just going to be a straight arrow shot from here to having all the insights and all the change that we want to see. It's going to have this spiraling motion. And like I say, the back of the spiral is really where the juicy stuff starts to happen. So this has been happening for me lately, and I'll talk about that a little more in a minute. That's the second part that I wanted to share for this Q&A episode. And like I say, the automatic reaction can be to resist that, and for the chatter in our thinking to be quite negative about ourselves, and to worry about what's happening, and we can sort of bear down and kind of get more restrictive with ourselves, which is an old habit, right? That's how we knew in the past how to deal with an overeating habit. So applying the strategies that worked in the past and maybe having, creating more rules in our head about the foods that we can or can't eat and that kind of thing. So all of that sort of resistance action or activity, especially in our minds, is the place that we, might turn to immediately when we feel ourselves go into the back of the spiral. And what I want to share is that that's counterproductive. It's not going to help us smoothly navigate the back of the spiral to apply those kinds of solutions that I just mentioned. And it can be quite difficult to do, but what is more helpful is to just relax, which is easier said than done, into what's happening and let it happen and trust that insight will come in its own time about whatever learning it is that we're going through in the back of this spiral. And that can be one of the frustrating things, is that insight comes on its own time and we don't have control really over when that occurs. So sitting in that place of being in the back of the spiral can be scary and frustrating. And I'm not saying that it isn't. What I am saying is that if we can try as much as possible to not judge ourselves and to lean into the idea that this is where the learning takes place, and that I often find that the biggest learnings take place immediately after a period of frustration, and very often the greater the frustration, the greater the learning. So when we remember those kinds of things, it does get easier. And also, when we know that we're in the back of the spiral, we can beat ourselves up less about what's happening, about the lack of progress that we see. And that in itself, not beating ourselves up about what's going on helps, because it reduces the amount of thinking that we've got going on about the situation. And that's what we want, right? So our habit, as I talk about over and over again, is alerting us to the state of our thinking. And this is another thing I want to touch on. So when we get into the back of the spiral, what I try to remind myself about is that there's more for me to see about my own innate well-being. And the only way that my wisdom, my being, the greater intelligence that flows through me has to get my attention, that there's more for me to see about those things, about my well-being, is by speaking to me via my overeating habit. So when that happens, when I notice cravings come up that haven't come up for a while, that gets my attention, right? So now I'm noticing, and what I try to do is right away say to myself, oh, there's more for me to see here. There's more insight available to me. There's more wisdom available to me about my innate well-being and my resourcefulness and resilience and my connection to universal intelligence. So I'll segue then into the personal story of what I've been going through lately, which is the second part of what I wanted to share. So for months and months, I've been eating differently than I used to. And of course, this has been a gradual process. I learned about the inside out understanding, the 3 principles, in mid 2017. And there's been a real gradual shift and change. And I guess that's that spiraling motion, right? It hasn't been a straight arrow. there have been times when things have really shifted and changed, and then times when they get harder, when I get into the back of the spiral. And I really see that now. I didn't see it at the time. I thought I was just a slow learner. So as I'm recording this now, it's November 2023, sorry. And yeah, for like I say, for months and months I've been eating really well and my weight has been dropping, which is what I want. That's for me one thing that's important. I know that I'm carrying extra weight, and that may not be one of your goals, but it certainly is one of mine. And then I don't know exactly when, maybe 2 weeks ago, I came into the back of the spiral. And there are some specific feelings that I have around food that come up for me and I know when I'm in the back of the spiral, like specific cravings, and they tend to be around supper time. They tend to be, I've talked about this, I think, on a previous episode. I have cravings for rice and potatoes, that kind of thing. So I include those with my meals. And again, not the end of the world. I mean, really, this is, not life-threatening stuff. But for someone who's trying to lose weight, rice and potatoes do not help that situation. So I notice those cravings come up, and I just want to walk you through what's been happening for me while that's been going on. And it's a lot of what I've already shared, but this is just a more personal look at how I've been dealing with this. So the first thing that happens is the cravings come up, and I resist them right away. I'll notice myself going, oh no, this is not good. I was doing so well and now I'm not. And then pretty quickly, the same day, I'll remember, oh, right, okay, I'm in the back of the spiral. These cravings are communicating with me. They're letting me know that there's more for me to see about my own innate well-being. And so then I really try to relax into them. And the way I always talk about this too, the way to make something sticky is to resist it. So I really try not to do that. So if I feel like having rice and potatoes or potatoes, I don't have them both usually in the same meal, then I do that. And I let myself, have that experience and try not to, like I guess I said this already, but take it really seriously and punish myself about that, because that's definitely not the objective. So I really try to relax into what's happening and not be so judgmental. And, I go in and out of that. Of course, there are moments when I feel quite judgmental about myself, especially because I'm teaching these things, and we tend to hold ourselves to a different standard when we're teaching, which is not really fair, because I'm experiencing exactly what you're going to experience. And it's better if I'm able to share from the back of the spiral than to just pretend it doesn't exist, because pretending it doesn't exist isn't going to help you, because you're just going to feel bad about yourself when that's happening for you. So I lean into what's happening. I just let it happen and try not to be too judgmental. And then another big part of it is I've learned over these years that I've been exploring the 3 principles that I can really trust insight. I know it's coming. I know the universe hasn't abandoned me. It hasn't turned its back on me. I can rely on the fact that insight will be coming, and it will be, a real shift in consciousness for me. I'll be able to see something that I haven't been able to see before. And so the reason I'm recording this today is because last night I had an insight about the back of the spiral that I'm in. And it hasn't solved the problem, but I definitely feel like that forward sense of momentum. And so I'll explain to you what the insight was for me, but with the caveat that you're not looking for this specific insight. So the insight that I have is very specific to me. And insights are interesting in that I feel like I'm getting this sense that they are universal. Every insight is universal in that insights always point toward our, as I've said numerous bazillion times on this podcast so far, they point to our innate well-being, to our resourcefulness, to our resilience, to the fact that we are always well, that we always return to a state of calm and peace. So that's their universality. It's, a real shorthand way of saying what insights are is that they're always pointing towards love, basically, always. And we just seem to get a greater and greater grasp of how that works, how we are made of love, how we are all connected by love. We are all connected to the universal intelligence that is loving. So to me, that's the universality of insight. But then the specificity of it is that the way that each insight speaks to us is going to be very specific to whatever it is we're wrestling with at the moment. And this is kind of the funny thing about insight. We can share with people what we've seen, the insights that we have. They're not going to impact another person in the same way that they impact us in the moment. So the insight that I have, I've really been contemplating about how our unwanted habits always are pointing to the fact that we have insecure, busy thinking that's going on in our minds. And I've been aware of that, of course, for quite some time. And I've noticed over the years since exploring this understanding that just by looking in this direction, the busy thinking in my head has really dropped away. And I've shared too on this podcast about how I used to experience a lot of anxiety disguised as urgency. And that's a great example of something that I didn't have to do anything to fix that feeling of urgency. I didn't, say positive affirmations to it or any of those kind of techniques. I didn't meditate on it or anything like that. Simply by turning my head in this direction and learning about the three principles and the way that our life works from the inside out has made that anxiety, that urgency just drop away. And it does, of course it does come up every once in a while if I'm under a lot of pressure, but now I notice it and I know what it is. And I just say to it, well, that's okay. I know that you will flow through me and eventually I'll settle down all on my own. There's nothing that I need to do. So that's been really, really helpful in that realm of things. So grasping this idea that our busy, insecure thinking is what our habits are trying to alert us to. They are feedback that is going on. So when I came into this moment of being in the back of the spiral, that's where my attention went. Attention's not quite the right word, but I just have been considering, okay, so, our habits are always alerting us to our busy, insecure thinking. So there must be something more here for me to see about that. And then last night, as I say, this insight came up, and it was that my busy, insecure mind doesn't feel safe not being busy. So in other words, if I think of doing something relaxing, like I've anytime I'm getting, a pedicure or a manicure, well, I hardly ever get manicures, but having a massage, that's a great example. Actually, every once in a while I go and have a massage, on my shoulders, because working at computers, shoulders get really tight. I have a really hard time just relaxing and letting the massage therapist do what she needs to do. I tend to, I just feel, I don't feel safe. I guess that's the bottom line. I don't feel safe just lying on the massage table and letting things happen, and not being kind of busy and, active and on top of things. So I, if I was ever on a vacation where, like, it makes me uncomfortable to even think of being on a vacation where I could just lie on a sun lounger for most of the day and read a book. I just couldn't do that. I would feel, that would feel kind of threatening, that kind of deep relaxation. So all that is to say, that's what this insight that I had last night was pointing me toward. Now, the next thing that happens is that our minds, my mind goes, okay, I know what's happening now. What can I do about it? How can I be how can I be more relaxed? What can I do to be more relaxed and be okay with my mind being quiet? And of course, that's that's not the path to take. And so the tricky thing is, in this case, sometimes an insight comes along and it just shifts everything, and suddenly you're in the front of the spiral again. But this feels like an insight that where I'm kind of partway up the back of the spiral, and I've seen a little bit more about what's going on with me, but I can tell it didn't shift things in a way that's going to enable me to get on to the front of the spiral for the next little while. So, given that that's the case, then what I can do, quote unquote, is actually nothing. So again, we come back to, I've seen something new, there's been a shift in consciousness, but getting in there and trying to figure out how to make my mind more quiet and make my mind feel safe in certain circumstances, like lying on a sun chair and reading a book all day, is not what's going to make that happen at all. So what I need to do now is, again, what I've done up until now, just trust that insight will be there for me. And I trust too that sometimes change is really incremental, and we may not even notice it, but I may notice in a few days or a few weeks that that craving for potatoes and rice has just fallen away and I don't care about them anymore. That's happened to me many, many, many times on this journey. So I trust that that can happen as well. Sometimes it seems to me that insight is conscious, and we kind of feel it land, like I felt that insight last night land with me. It was like a sentence, in my head, but it had insight, of course, has a resonance that our normal thoughts don't have. Like I heard it in my head, but I feel it all over my body at the same time. It just has this real, landing kind of feeling sometimes, and not always. It can be extremely subtle, but last night for sure I felt it, and I felt myself pause what I was doing, and kind of that I had that sort of awestruck look on my face, I could tell. And I thought to myself, oh, this is big. I can feel that. And that really helped me to understand what was going on with me. So what else do I want to say about that? So I guess now what I'm doing is I'm just trusting that I will have more insights about this situation. I'm not resisting being in the back of the spiral because, like I said, this is the place where learning occurs. And we want everything to be perfect and smooth, and especially when we're on a weight loss journey, we just want that to continue. We want that curve to be going down, but that's not what's happening right now. And being hard on myself or upset about that is not going to help the situation. So I'm grateful that I know enough about the back of the spiral to just ease off the gas and let whatever happens, whatever needs to happen, let that happen, and things will evolve. And I wanted to say too, remember there was a few weeks ago I mentioned in a Q&A episode that I was wanting to exercise more and I was feeling a resistance to that. That I think is all part of this. So that resistance that I felt was speaking to me as well. That's like an unwanted habit. There's that tension there that I talked about. And I still feel that. And I think that's part of this insight that I'm having about my busy mind, and the feedback that I'm getting from wisdom about that there is more for me to see. Yeah, about my well-being and my innately loving and wise self, just like yours. So that's it for me today. That's quite a lot of talking for one person, for one moment. So I hope that that's been helpful for you, and that it maybe has guided you toward seeing something new about your journey. And I really hope that now that you've heard this metaphor about the back of the spiral, that the next time you feel like maybe you've taken a couple of steps backward, that you realize that that's not true, that you're simply at the back of the spiral, you're going uphill. So it's a little harder, things get harder, but as I said, this is where the learning happens. This is where the insights come, and where we see things in a new way that supports change and and coming home to who we really are. So that's it for today. I need a glass of water after all that talking. I hope you were well, and I will talk to you again next week. Take care. Bye.